you going to read them later? You're, yeah, that's what I would do. Why not?
Aren't they going to be mine? Just kidding.
We'll all get a turn, okay?
I don't-
I'm going to make it my
Here you go, Caleb.
mission in life that before the semester is over, we've all received love from each other. Yes, dear.
What about you?
Yeah.
Oh, believe me, I have a turn too.
Okay.
I need it. Okay. All right, so the big idea first we're talking about is something called cultural transmission. And the idea is that you are influenced by your culture. Like you think the way you do because you're an American. You think the way you do because of your ethnic background. Some of you, any Germans in here? Okay, any Irish in here? Wow, same people. Any Hispanic? Any? Okay. All of those things. Do any of you belong in a family where you actually do celebrate a ethnic specific celebration? You want to share?
Same thing for the German.
Very good. Okay, so you celebrate St. Nick's Day. So do we actually. Yeah, whatever cultural tradition that you might be unique, that's one of the things that makes America great, right? Is that we're a nation of different ethnic backgrounds. And so any of you been to Milwaukee in the summer? Every weekend, there's a parade. And it's like, oh, what ethnic group is celebrating this weekend? And it's German Day, and it's Irish Day, and it's Hispanic Day. It's amazing, right? It's kind of fun. And then you are influenced by the views of your parents. I don't know if I'm shocking anybody, but there's a good chance if your mom and dad are conservative, so are you. If they are Trump supporters, so are you. Now, I'm not saying that's absolutely true, but there's a very good chance. You think the way your mom and dad thinks. Now, sometimes that's not true. You think the way you do because you are rejecting the views of mom and dad, and that's very, very prevalent as well. But all these things influence who you are, including criminal behavior or deviant behavior. How many of you have ever experienced this? You go to a restaurant, your mom and dad sees the kids' menu and informs you that you're 10. And you say, but I'm not 10, I'm 13. Shut up, you're 10. You know why they're doing that? Right, save a little bit of money, but you know what you're learning? It's okay to bend the rules. And the thinking your mom and dad's probably, and I'm guilty of this too. I thought this, that what do they care? What does Perkins care if I claim that my kid is 10? It doesn't negatively affect them. And you take that logic and you run with it. And that's the justification of deviant behavior, right? You take that thing from Walmart, and how do you justify it as you're walking out the door, taking that CD or whatever? Yeah, what does Walmart care? They're not going to miss it. Walmart's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Nah, they won't miss it. It's the same logic. I hate to say this, but I can remember when I was young, my family, we skied. That was our family thing too. We skied, so every year we'd go to Colorado and ski. And this one place, if you were deaf, you got in half price. So my mom and dad are deaf, of course, and for that week, so was everybody else. All got in half price. And I can remember my dad afterwards saying, that was wrong. That was wrong. But it didn't occur to him before that, right? He saved a lot of money. It's wrong, right? It's wrong, but you learn behavior from all of these influences, whether it's your culture or your family, they influence you, including criminal behavior, right? Where do you learn system? Where do you learn to rip someone off from your mom who doesn't pay all of her taxes? You learn that. Where do you learn that it's okay to steal? From your dad who shows up every day with a stapler from work, right? I know I've been guilty of that. We'll run out of paper at home, and the next day I'll take a ream of paper from the school. That's the taxpayers of Somerset. That doesn't belong to my son Noah, but I know I've done it. Pens, paper clips, I know I've done it. And I'm a terrible father in that situation.
Report time.
Any questions here? That's known as cultural transmission. You learn proper and improper behavior from whatever is the major influence of it. Okay? It's perpetuated. Questions? Two more. So this is a slide of the second big idea, and it's something called differential association. And let's look at the chart here before I explain exactly what we're looking at. So this is a chart that measures gang membership in various areas. So gang membership in big cities. So you're talking about, downtown Minneapolis, downtown Detroit, whatever. Suburban. So Eden Prairie, Woodbury, right? Even Somerset's a third tier suburb. We're going to get to that in a bit here. And smaller cities, you're talking about, I don't know, Richmond would be a smaller city, and then rural, way out there. Okay, so you'll notice that black membership, gang membership, is pretty steady. How many of you are surprised by this? But the highest percentage of African American gang activity is in dinky little towns. The highest percentage of black gang membership is in the middle of nowhere, USA. That the lowest percentage is actually small towns, but percentage-wise, it's higher in the middle of nowhere, USA than in downtown Detroit. Yes.
So is this based off of say there's 10 people, or 10 black people, and 6 of them are in a gang? That's how it's measured.
Right. It's by percentage. Right. So very
It's
good.
not based
Right.
off of-
You have to be careful here. If you're concluding, wow, there are more black gang members in the middle of nowhere than in large cities, no, that's not what it means. Percentage-wise, there might be 10 people and 6 of them think they're in a gang. Well, that's 60% gang membership. In downtown Detroit, several million and less than 40%, right? So it's by percentage. Let's look at some other groups. Hispanic, Latino, highest group gang membership in smaller cities. Caucasian white, highest percentage in rural. Other Asian, which is growing a thing. So what does this mean? So the idea of differential association, I'm just reading this, it says people will more likely violate rules if they're part of a group that values this. Think of Johnny. All right, let's just take Johnny. Johnny's an athletic kid, can run real fast, very shifty, quick, fast, smart. Put him in Eden Prairie, he's the starting safety for their football team. Take that same kid, take Johnny, put him in downtown Detroit, he's a runner for a gang. They give him the drugs and the money, and he uses his athletic ability to achieve an athletic achievement, but in a very different setting. What's different? Setting. Johnny's the same. The setting is different. So if you're in a group that values certain things, you will value certain things. So think about this kind of big idea. Is stealing wrong? Is stealing wrong? Most of you are nodding your head, yes. But that's the wrong question. The question should go something like this. Is stealing a violation of the norms of American society? That's clearly yes. Is stealing violating the norms of a gang? No. Right? Violation of the norms of the group you're in. If the group you're in values stealing, then you're part of the group. You have associated with that group. It depends on the group you're in. Think about the language. Here's a great way to understand differential association. Think of the language you choose to use in certain situations, right? You go to Thanksgiving and there's grandma and grandpa. Do you talk to them the way you talk to your friends? Do you use the same words? Might a few Effenheimers fly when you're with your friends and not with grandma? You're a different person. Like, here I am, Mr. Potter, teacher. I have a boss, right? Miss Donnelly. I don't talk to her the way I talk to some of my college buddies when we're golfing, right? Different words are used. Same me, but I'm different. It depends on who I'm with. Who am I associating with leads to different behavior. So do you engage in criminal activity? Is the wrong question. Do you engage in deviant activity? Not really. If you're part of the gang, the criminal activity is not deviant behavior. It's the appropriate behavior for the group you're in. Am I making sense? I hope I'm making sense. Okay. So for example, again, an outgoing boy, athletic boy, if he's in a criminal neighborhood, what will he do? He's a friendly person. And in the neighborhood he lives in, there's a gang. That's his way of being friendly. He joins the gang. That's what he'll do. That same kid in a safe neighborhood joins the baseball team. Right? His personality is outgoing, friendly, wants to meet people. Well, if he's in a crappy neighborhood, his option is gang. If he's in Eden Prairie, Stillwater, his option is baseball. Same kid, same personality. What's different? The setting. The setting's different. Right? Do you get it? Big idea. Have I told you, have I warned you that the next test is sort of a doozy? Sort of a doozy. Of course you can retake it. Okay. Ready? Ready? Last slide as far as discussion is concerned. So this is one of my favorite theories. It's called social disorganization theory. So before you try and understand it, just give me a second here. So let's go to downtown St. Paul, okay? And let's travel back in time, say about 100 years ago, okay? Downtown St. Paul is where people lived and worked. You lived in the city you work in. Let me just ask this. How many of you have moms and dads? You all live in Somerset. Is there anyone who lives in the New Richmond town, but you're in the Somerset School District? Is that anybody in here? There's a few, okay. It's really weird, right? It's the same thing in where my wife works. Like, she works at a school. It's in the Stillwater School District. Everybody that attends that school lives in Woodbury. Everybody. But they're in the Stillwater School District. It's really weird. Some things. Woodbury's better at football this past year. But anyway. Okay. How many of you have mom and dads that live in Somerset but work somewhere else? Look at that. Almost all of you. Almost all of you. Like, the idea that you live in Somerset and your mom and dad work here. Anyone have that little criteria? Oh, what can I ask? What do they do?
My dad basically works for himself. He's an accountant.
Okay, very good. Perfect. All right. So it does exist, and it's probably a small business, probably a proprietor, right? You're the owner of your own business. That's probably likely. But there aren't necessarily huge. There are a few in Industrial Park. There are a few larger businesses that exist here. But most of you probably, I'm guessing here, have moms and dads that if they work, they drive over the river. Yes? Okay, they work in the cities? Okay, perfect. That's exactly right. 100 years ago? No. You lived in St. Paul. You worked in St. Paul. If you work in Minneapolis, that's where you'd live. Why would you live where you don't work? That doesn't make any sense. Makes perfect sense today. But 100 years ago, no one thought that. You lived where you work. You walked to work. Or you got on your horse and rode to work or whatever. All right. You lived in these industrial towns, probably, by the way, owned by the company and rented out to the workers. Okay. Now, as people gained wealth, as a few people gained wealth, they decided to move out of St. Paul, creating what's known as a suburb, which really started right around World War II. So the people who could afford it moved out of St. Paul into what's called a Tier 1 suburb. I'll call it Maplewood. Any of you ever been to Maplewood Mall? Okay, you get the idea. So Maplewood is considered a Tier 1 suburb. It's really close to the downtown central area. Who lives here? The people who can afford it live there. Okay, now they now build nicer houses and they pay what are called property taxes. Guess who isn't collecting property taxes anymore from those people that no longer live there? St. Paul. Exactly. St. Paul has things that are paid for with property taxes. They're called schools. Schools are paid for through property taxes. The people who moved out of St. Paul now live in Maplewood and they pay property taxes, which means Maplewood now has nice schools. And St. Paul's schools start to go because their funding has just gone down. Okay, think about in Wisconsin, right? Okay, so Jack, I know we have a football player right here. Jack, is there ever a good football team from a downtown Milwaukee or Madison school? Never, right? It's true in the cities too. You never hear of Minneapolis South in the state championship. That sentence doesn't happen. Who wins everything? The suburbs. Eden Prairie, Apple Valley, Woodbury, Stillwater. They win everything. And what we're trying to do is figure out, well, why? What's going on? Okay? So the people can't afford it, move to Maplewood. By the way, they still work in St. Paul. They still work, but they don't live there. But they still work there. And the St. Paul, that means that St. Paul has to provide schools while no longer collecting the income. They have to provide police. But you know who's not paying for the police? The people who live in Maplewood. So I'm receiving the protection of the police, but I'm not paying for them. I'm paying for the Maplewood police. But St. Paul police are protecting me during the day. Okay. Now, Maplewood, they have to service these people that now live there. So the eruption of services. Let's call them malls. They're called malls, right? So that I can go shop at Target and so I can get served. And I can get my hair cut and I can go to the mall. And so that means that somebody has to work at these places. So this is kind of an amazing thing. The people who live in Maplewood work in St. Paul. A significant number of the people that live in St. Paul work in Maplewood. They're the people that work at Target and cut hair, but they can't afford to live there. So they live in St. Paul because it's cheaper. And they work at Target. Can you imagine that road? Right? These people live in St. Paul and are working at Target. These people live in Maplewood and they're working at 3M. Well, Maplewood gets more and more crowded. It gets crowded, so people move out. They move to a tier 2 suburb. Let's call it Woodbury. My wife's from Woodbury. When I was sweeping her off her feet, when she fell instantly in love with me, and I eventually came around. But anyway, when we were courting, I hate that word, but we were courting, when we were dating, right? She lived in Woodbury. And I remember Woodbury was this dinky little farm village. Maybe 15,000 people lived there. Any of you been to Woodbury lately? It's insane, isn't it? It's a city of 60,000 people.
It's 68,000.
Good God, that's crazy. Okay?
Why do you know
I don't know.
Why do you know that? Okay. Woodbury is a tier 2 suburb, right? People move to Woodbury. They live there. The houses are beautiful, but they probably still work in St. Paul. Or they might, some of the larger businesses might decide to move to Woodbury. Maplewood. 3M, headquartered in Maplewood. The headquarters of 3M, which, by the way, 3M is one of the 5 largest companies in the nation. It's not a top 500 company. It's a top 5 company. 3M is huge. You live in Woodbury. Woodbury, though, is an example of what I call a pure suburb. It's a pure suburb. Let me explain what I mean by that. So let's say I need to meet you after school today. We need to talk about whatever. So I say to this, listen, let's just meet in Woodbury. All right? See you there. 6 o'clock. Let's meet in Woodbury. All right. What are the chances you and I are going to see each other? Where's Woodbury? Right? I mean, there's a Target over here. And then there's that Dick's Sporting Goods. It's over here, and then there's like a Cub over here. Where's Woodbury? It's everywhere and nowhere. It's a streetlight city, right? It's a city, and you know it's a city because there are streetlights there, and there's a shopping center over there, right? Now, what if I said, let's meet downtown Stillwater?
Oh.
Okay, we probably eventually run, because it's a street. Stillwater is a street, okay? Stillwater is a suburb, but Stillwater is an unusual suburb, unlike Woodbury. Woodbury became a suburb. Stillwater was already a city, and then it became a suburb, right? So anyway, let's keep going. Stillwater. Stillwater is eventually swallowed up. People moved to Stillwater, and again, Stillwater is an unusual one because Stillwater is actually one of the oldest cities around. It almost was the capital. Some unusual circumstances made it Minneapolis, but Stillwater was almost actually Wisconsin. Again, just unusual historical things made it so it isn't, but it almost was. But anyway, so same thing, right? People live in Stillwater, but they drive to work at 3M or whatever, okay? I'm the weird one. I live in Stillwater, and I don't go that way. I go that way, right? You should see the traffic in the morning. As I'm driving here, the car's going the other way. It's me by myself and all these cars. Where are they going? They're going to Anderson Window, or they're going to 3M, or they're going to work in the cities, right? There's an explanation here. But you see, as people keep moving out, what happens to poor St. Paul, right? Its services go down because its tax base is gone. Who's paying for garbage collection? Who's paying for the cops? Who's paying for the schools? Nobody. Think about the quality of those services in downtown areas. It goes down. Where do you think crime happens? Where does crime happen? Where cops aren't really funded, where schools are crappy, is where crime occurs. And this unit is about, why does crime occur? Crime occurs because of social disorganization. As people leave, the tax base leaves, leaving St. Paul to have to provide services without the funding to do so. And let's keep going. Yay, Somerset. Somerset is a tier 4 suburb of the Twin Cities. And if you're thinking right now, that can't be, we're in Wisconsin and the Twin Cities are in Minnesota. Do you think that that magical line dictates that people can't be in a suburb here? Wait, this can't be a suburb? The St. Croix there. What? That doesn't make sense, right? Again, how many of you rose your hands and said that your moms and dads work in the cities? Okay, they're following this pattern. Have you ever thought about the design of this building? Right? Any of you discovered that some of our doors going outside lead to nowhere? Right? You open the door like, why is there a door here? They're everywhere, right? Doors that open up to grass. Like, well, thank God there's a door here because it's vital that this grass, right? They're everywhere. Do you know why? It was built to expand. You ever think about why it's so flat right there? It's designed that way so that expansion can occur, because the thought was, once that bridge goes in, and here it is, this school's population we'll see if that actually happens, but that's the thinking. The thinking is that that bridge is going to lead to people moving here because the bridge supposedly cuts travel time. So people can live here and drive to the cities, and it won't take as long. That's the idea. So let's identify exactly what we're talking about. Why does crime increase? Crime increases when there's a lack of financial resources in the inner city, St. Paul. I will address how St. Paul and Minneapolis and Detroit and how these others kind of try and fight this in a second, but let's just get the idea, right? It occurs because of the fact that people don't live where they work. Can you understand that if you live where you work, you are a fuller member of that community? Now we have transient people. I live here, but I work here. And so there's a loss of people who are fully invested where they live and work. Where you used to live and where you worked, you cared about the community. Not that I don't care about Somerset. I do, of course I do. But I live in two different worlds, right? I follow Stillwater athletics and Somerset athletics, which is really weird when Stillwater plays Somerset, which doesn't happen too often, but we used to. We used to play Stillwater in volleyball. Didn't go well, but we used to play them in volleyball. It was great. And I know Coach Larson wanted to, a few years ago, back when he wanted that team with Tyler Ledbetter, he wanted that team to play Stillwater. They were really good. That Somerset team was phenomenal. I always wondered, like, how would that have gone? That would have been kind of fun, right? I live in two different worlds. Well, when you live in two different worlds like that, are you part of either? Fully, maybe not. Okay, this theory says you aren't. Think about the downtown St. Paul area. When people move out, that's fewer people contributing money weekly to the church, right? So they can't provide the church services. The libraries don't have the funding to have full library service. The schools don't have the nice computers, right? Think about, we used to wrestle in Eden Prairie. Incredible. That school is amazing. It's a campus. I remember getting lost one time. Like, where's the gym? I went to take a leak. Right? God, where am I? And then some janitor's like, it's over here, right? It's enormous, right? They have a dome. Eden Prairie has a dome. Athletic facility, right? You think any downtown St. Paul school has a dome? Do you know when St. Paul schools and Minneapolis schools play their football games? You think they play them on Friday nights? Are you nuts? Too much gang activity. They play them on Friday right after school. And there is a curfew, so everybody goes home because it's not safe at 7 o'clock at night. That's when they play their games. Isn't that amazing? Right? How do you fight this? Well, St. Paul and Minneapolis have come up with a conclusion, and it's called professional sports. Where do the Wild play? Downtown St. Paul. So what happened was that St. Paul concluded, we need a professional sports team downtown. People will come from the suburbs to St. Paul to watch the Wild. And then after the game, they'll go and spend their money on a drink or a meal. And the money will come back in, right? Where do the Vikings play? Downtown Minneapolis. Who paid for that stadium? State of Minnesota paid for that stadium, right? And the idea is, get people downtown, watch the game, and then after the game, spend your money on food and drinks, clothing, etc. So that's a way of fighting this little pattern that's been going on for a while. Wow, okay. A lot of ideas here. Do you get the idea, though? Why does crime happen in St. Paul? Because the tax base moves out, which means they can't pay for the cops and the schools and the libraries and the hospitals and the garbage collection. So St. Paul falls into crime. If you think it's bad in St. Paul, wow, go see Detroit. This is true. Did you know that you can buy a house in downtown Detroit for $1? $1. You can have a house in Detroit. And if you're thinking, well, why wouldn't I'll go buy 10 houses. I got a 10. There's a rule, though. You have to live in it. If you buy the house for $1, you have to live in that house. And you have to fix it. You got to fix the house, right? Detroit is there's been a mass exodus of people from Detroit over the last couple of years. They're trying to get people to move back in. So they have these deals, like, right? It's an abandoned house. You want to live in it? $1, fix the thing. And you can live there. Anyway, okay. Any questions here? Go ahead.
So with that, like, buy a house for $1 thing, wouldn't there be like those like big fancy, or I guess shows are everywhere, like those home renovation shows? Wouldn't they take that and run? Or would they
You
not
gotta live in
want
it.
to?
You
Yeah.
have to live in it. And there's an extended period. You have to live in it for a certain amount of time. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to let's say 3 years. You got to live in it for 3 years.
If they were to fix all the houses, though, wouldn't that bring better people?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that's what happens, actually. What's her name? The girl. That's where she fixes houses. She also is in Minneapolis. In fact, she's going to be in Minneapolis Sunday showing off one of her houses, and my wife and I are going to go meet her. What's her name? The girl that fixes the houses.
There's a lot.
Yeah, you know that one girl.
Married?
She is married. Pretty blonde girl.
Pretty blonde girl? Wait,
Yeah,
wait, what's her name?
I can't remember her name.
The only one I can think of is the one that fixes mansions. That's what my mom's watching recently.